Should I share at work about my ADHD and autism? Hi, I'm Brett, the AudHD Boss, and on this channel we take a strengths-based approach to ADHD and autism in the workplace. I'm a corporate manager. I've been in leadership position for more than 10 years. I have ADHD and I am autistic. A question I've gotten a lot from some folks lately is, should I share my autism and ADHD diagnosis at work? And if I do, how do I manage those expectations? Well, this is a tricky one because I can't personally recommend if you should or shouldn't. You can only evaluate whether you should or shouldn't based on if you feel safe in your work situation and what's going to work for your specific needs. And that's actually the first thing I'm going to recommend that you tackle. A question you should ask yourself is, what do I want to get out of this experience? If you're sharing it with just a colleague, a coworker, that's different than from sharing with a boss. But if you're sharing with a coworker or you're sharing with a colleague about the fact that you're ADHD or you have autism, you want to first maybe evaluate what I want to get out of this interaction. While there's been a lot of new information and new research around ADHD and autism, not everybody's gotten the memo. And that right there is a question to ask yourself is, how much energy do I want to put in if I need to educate this person if they don't know as much as I want them to know? For a lot of folks, there's a lot of anxiety about sharing about their neurodivergence at work. For some people, it may not be a concern at all. You may feel perfectly fine to share that. I know for me personally, it was difficult for me to come to that decision when I decided that I was going to start sharing that with people. I was really nervous. I was nervous because people would see me differently, would treat me differently, would act differently around me. But ultimately, I made the decision to share that with my coworkers because I felt it was better for me in the long run. I felt it was better for me to both be a person in my specific role, in my position where I work, to demonstrate that this is a really good person that you can confide in if you have your ADHD and autism and you're looking for someone to talk to about how to show up at work with those, or if you're running into struggles, I wanted to be a resource for people. I also wanted to show that where I take a strengths-based approach to my ADHD and my autism, I wanted to be a role model specifically in that work, which is why I decided to share. But in the other instances, I've been able to work carefully with people. Sometimes the reaction has been no reaction at all. Sometimes the reaction has been, oh, me too. And then we end up having a really good generative conversation about how we work best together. More often than not, they may know someone or have a friend or a relative or a colleague or someone who is also in. They're happy to share that with you. I always try to assume positive intent when I enter into these conversations, when I make that decision to bring that up. But there are going to be times that when you share your ADHD or your autism with a colleague or a coworker, that somebody's going to respond in a not so helpful way. Some people might minimize it by saying, oh, everybody does that. That's a really frustrating response for a lot of us who decide to share about our neurodivergence at work. Something else you can also respond to in that moment is everyone's lived experience is entirely different. And while some people may experience one particular way of that, for somebody with autism and ADHD, we experience an entirely different version of that in how we approach the world and how our brains are wired differently, how our brains are literally wired differently. And because of that, we experience that in a much different way. And then feel free to, if you feel safe and you feel comfortable, to expand on how much or how little about that you want to expand on in your personal experience. Anytime we can specifically talk to our specific lived experience and talk about it from our perspective, it takes it away from that monolithic or they over there, them kind of thinking, and it helps humanize it and become real to the person that we're speaking to. And for all we know, that might be an entry point for that person to learn more about themselves or someone else in their family. But decide for yourself how you would like to approach that. For me, I like to do education because that's what I do. It's a special interest of mine. I've been studying autism and ADHD for so many years as a part of my own diagnosis journey and my own process that for me, I have a lot of data points. I have a lot of resources. I have all of that stuff at my fingertips because it's a special interest. But I recognize not everybody wants to do that, and it's not a special interest for everybody. Again, if you feel safe and if you feel comfortable to, is to walk through how that's different for you, or it can be an opportunity to invite somebody into that conversation with whether or not maybe that's not the case for everybody. And maybe it's through those ways you discovered your autism or ADHD diagnosis, and maybe invite this person to do some more reading, say more about that. Tell me why you think that. Tell me why you feel that way. And then you can hopefully engage in that conversation. Or you may just go, okay, and recognize that this person's response and or their energy is not worth your time, and then you can move on. But ultimately what it comes down to is deciding for yourself, what do you want to get out of that interaction? And if they respond that way, what do you want to get out of the reaction on that side of that response? I'm always a fan of pointing people to the resource of How to ADHD, Embrace Autism, Neurodivergent Insights. And if you get that kind of a response from somebody, if they're open to learning more, if they're open to finding out more information, recommend some places for them to check out to see how those differences are real, and then send them on their way and move on to something else. But don't let their negative reaction impact your feelings of how you feel. That's their issue to process. That's their learning journey to get on, and not reflective of you or where you're at in your journey. If you're sharing with a boss, there might be a question from your boss asking about, do you need accommodations? When I decided to share with my boss, that was a different scenario. I shared with my boss specifically because in that moment, I did need an accommodation, and I was frustrated by certain walls that I was hitting by the systems that are in place in my workspace that I could not figure out a way around because of my autism and my ADHD, and I needed support in that moment. And so I made a decision to share that because I needed a reasonable accommodation. I have a whole different video about that conversation and about what I did and the decisions that I made about that. So if you have a unique situation for how you've handled that question, please let others know in the comments. If you've had both positive and not so positive interactions, I'd love to know how you handled each of those situations at work. This is a question that comes up for a lot of people. I've received this question a lot. Everyone's experience is different, and I would love to know more about your experience. Thanks for watching this video. I'm Brett, the AudHD Boss. If any of the information that I've shared today has been helpful for you, please let me know down in the comments. Be sure to like and subscribe. It really does help the channel grow. And if you've got a topic that you would like for me to cover about being autistic or ADHD in the workplace, specifically in the corporate workplace, let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and be sure to check out some of the other videos on my channel.